Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Atheist Experience. That was the Smiths. Big Mouth strikes again. We are live. Today is Sunday. Is it the 5th of August, 2007? It is the 5th. Welcome. We're a live call-in public access program sponsored by the Atheist Community of Austin. And I'm your host, Matt Dillahunty, and joining me this week's Tracie Harris. And we'll be speaking a little bit about intolerance shortly.
Yep. Absolutely.
How was your week?
Good.
Cool. I don't know why. I normally wait for like the graphics to appear on there. So last week we had problems with the audio, and this week I don't actually see the graphic, which is where I was normally going to tell what day it was today. But we'll just go ahead and assume that it's the 5th since I got approval from other people that it actually was. How's everybody doing? Welcome back. Glad you could join us. This, as I said, is a live public access call-in program. We'll have a telephone number up shortly. It gives the atheists in the Austin community the opportunity to interact with the public, answer questions, discuss topics of current events, and have public debates and education about religious discussions and things of that nature. We're sponsored by the Atheist Community of Austin, a nonprofit education organization that promotes positive atheism and the separation of church and state. The ACA has weekly meetings every Sunday at Ventan del Sol on East Old Torf, beginning at 11, except for the first Sunday of the month, which was today, when we host a lecture series at the Austin History Center located at the corner of 9th and Guadalupe. Those lectures begin at 12:15. Today I gave the lecture on kind of visions of hell. Next month, ACA member Mark Lowy will be giving a lecture, and we're not quite sure what the topic is yet, but we're looking forward to that. Also, after this program's over, everybody involved in the show gets together for dinner, and we've been going to IHOP at the corner of I-35 and Cesar Chavez. This show runs till 4:30 Central, and of course, if you're not in the Central Time Zone, you're definitely not going to make it down for dinner. We're down there from 5 to 7 p.m. Any atheist or atheist-friendly person is welcome to attend. And in addition to this program, the ACA also sponsors a bi-weekly internet audio podcast called The Nonprofits. That's PROPHETS. You can get more information at www.nonprofitsradio.com. That's hosted by Dennis Loubet and myself, and we don't take live calls, although we do now have the ability to take calls, so we'll have call-in guests and remote co-hosts. But we do run a chat room in conjunction with the show so that people listening live are able to hear it. We now are producing higher quality audio for the podcast because rather than just ripping the live stream, which is lower quality, I'm recording another stream out and posting that for the podcast. And no, it's not 100 megs anymore. I corrected that on the one episode and the one that came after it. So, in addition to our Sunday meetings, the ACA hosts a number of social events throughout the week. We have rotating events on Wednesdays. This Wednesday we'll be doing board gaming along with CFI at Thor's Hammer, just off North 183 at Spicewood Springs. And the following week will be bowling at Austin 300. And then the week after that it'll be billiards at Side Pocket on North Lamar, just a block or so south of Breaker. All of those events are open to any atheist or atheist-friendly person. They may or may not be free. We're not paying for everybody's bowling, so there may be some expense for food or whatever that's on you. It's just the participation in the event's free, though, and everybody's welcome to come down as they are at the after-show dinner. The audio portion of this program is available on the website for download. You can go to www.atheist-community.org, which is right there. There'll be a link there to flagship, I forget what it's called, flagship activities maybe. Or you can go to atheist-experience.com, which is the website directly for this show. The video is now available at Google Video, so we have people watching us from around the world. Welcome to all of you. And the audio for the nonprofits is also available as a podcast. Anybody who doesn't get through on telephones today or doesn't want to is free to email tv@atheist-community.org. That email address goes to myself, the co-host, some of the people behind the scenes, and we'll take comments, questions, criticisms, corrections, anything you want. Also, when we open the phones, you don't necessarily have to talk about the topic at hand. We're open to having discussions about all kinds of things. But if you do, that's great. And if you ask a question that we've already answered, at least in this show, then we may direct you to the frequently asked questions portion of the website, where there's good little snippets on what is atheism, what do atheists believe, why aren't we just evil baby killing people because we don't believe in God anymore or ever. The in addition to all the various meetings and the dinner, we also host a happy hour on Thursdays at the Dog and Duck Pub located at the corner of 17th and Guadalupe. That begins around 7 o'clock and runs until, well, people are ready to leave. So we invite you down to any of those events that you want to. There are a couple things additional events that we do that we try to limit to members and specific guests. But you're welcome to come down and join us for dinner, a happy hour, or whatever. Unless you're coming down to preach, proselytize, or provoke us, we're not looking for a fight. If you're actually looking for a debate, we'll be happy to arrange maybe and schedule some kind of formal debate. We've talked about it on a number of occasions. Maybe we can do something in conjunction with students at UT coming this fall semester. I'd like to see some kind of debate. But if you're coming down to tell us how we're going to hell, you probably should just come to the lecture this morning. And then you would have learned that your vision of hell may not mesh up with everybody else's. So, but that's the way things go. Appreciate everybody who's tuned in, and especially those people who are emailing us from around the world with comments and encouragement. There's this deal with the new atheism, where it's really not. It's the same old atheism. What we're seeing is kind of a lot more people who are no longer content to just sit back and politely keep their mouths shut as what they see to be religious movements that are out to destroy the world. Not to be, Chicken Little. I don't think it's necessarily going to go that far. But when you are actively seeking to legislate what your personal beliefs are and make it illegal for anybody else to violate your personal beliefs, then we might have a little problem. And that kind of segues a little bit into what we're going to talk about today. No,
that's true. I think that we've had, recently there have been a number of atheist authors who have enjoyed a good bit of popularity, hitting New York Times bestseller lists with some atheist books and expressing atheist views. And, it's literally impossible to express an atheist view without launching what many people are going to consider, and what I don't think it would be unfair to consider, as an attack against religion. You do have to, in order to justify your atheist lack of belief in a God, address the claims regarding belief in God. And that's just kind of inherent in explaining your belief as an atheist. So the books themselves have been looked at by most religious people in the U.S., or people, I guess, that are into apologetics, as something that is offensive or intolerant. And they've been using the word intolerant quite frequently in response to these books, and I think more broadly in response to atheists generally. And we're going to look today at some definitions of intolerance and some definitions of bigotry and respect, and what it means to be tolerant of a belief, or what it means to respect a belief, or what it means to be a bigot. And starting out, I wanted to look at some claims that have been presented openly that are accusations toward atheists about their intolerance. So I wanted to sort of look at exactly what is being said when someone says an atheist is intolerant.
Right.
The first one is writer Kirsten Powers, who wrote an article called "An Intolerant Atheist," and it's a question mark. And she is specifically starts out her column discussing a book by Sam Harris called "The End of Faith." And she mentions that in the book it's been described as bashing Christianity as a fairy tale. One of the comments that she makes in regard to intolerance in the article that I'm mainly wanting to focus on is where she writes, "I always like to point out to my many atheist friends that I have never tried to convert them or ridicule their beliefs, but have been on the receiving ends of dozens of rants against my belief system, something that feels a lot like the person is trying to convert me to their way of life, atheism, all the while accusing religious people of being intolerant." To me, this is kind of it's sort of a backward way of saying that the atheists in her life, she feels some of them are intolerant. She's not coming out and saying atheists are intolerant. What she's doing is she's kind of saying there's a certain irony to an atheist trying to convert her or do what she feels is a conversion when they're calling Christians intolerant. So she sees this attempt at what she's calling an attempt at conversion, which seems to be the atheists explaining their stance in a way that she feels like she's personally attacked in the dialogue. So she's equating intolerance with somebody aggressively going after your belief system to say, I think it's wrong and here's why, is what it sounds like to me. I think that's a fair assessment of her statement.
Yeah, and her comment that she's never actually tried to go out and convert any of her
Right.
atheist friends. Well, first of all, other people are. But the bigger question is, I mean, if you're going to go make an analogy about things, I'd say you've never tried to convince me to shoot up heroin either, but that doesn't mean that I shouldn't be trying to tell you why heroin's a bad thing. And if you have this view, you know, if your view is that religion is poison for the mind, that doesn't mean you're not necessarily beating people up saying, oh, you moron, but to express your opinion on it and try and talk about it with people, that's not intolerant.
Right, and we're going to talk a little bit about how people present and how it's perceived as intolerance. And I just want to say that for myself, I think that a lot of people recognize me when I dialogue as being a person that tries to avoid, you know, personal attack. I try to avoid offensive language. I never attempt to incite somebody or upset them emotionally when I talk to them, even if I disagree. I know a number of atheists who are extremely, you know, acidic with their delivery, and I'm not here to deride that or to promote that as a way of dialoguing, but I will say that no matter how acidic someone gets with their dialogue, it doesn't become intolerance until they refuse to permit something.
Right.
That's when it becomes intolerance, and that's what we're going to talk about. What this woman, I think, is describing is that she feels as though people are, you know, attacking her belief system, trying to convince her their belief system is better. Someone trying to convince me that their belief system is better is not intolerance. That's simply them expressing their opinion about their belief system versus my belief system. That's dialogue, and there's nothing wrong with that. And even if they get vile in their delivery, even if they swear at me, even if they insult me, you know, say offensive things to me, you know, invoke my mother, whatever they want to do, it doesn't become intolerance so long as they don't take steps to force me to do or hold an opinion that they are promoting. They can talk about it all they want, and that's perfectly okay. And the manner in which they talk about it doesn't affect their right to discuss it. That's how I'm viewing this. And we're going to look at definitions later that, you know, I believe uphold that as a definition for intolerance. Another writer, his name, he logs as, looks like Caridal, who wrote, both atheism and theism become problematic when they are coupled with intolerant rhetoric which seeks to paint all people who hold different or opposing beliefs as less worthy. For example, there's nothing wrong with being a Christian, but when the Christian creed is coupled with fundamentalist rhetoric which seeks to paint all non-Christians, including atheists, as one homogeneous group who are all inherently evil and worthless, it becomes a problem. Similarly, there is nothing wrong with atheism when it is coupled, wrong with atheism, but when it is coupled with fundamentalist rhetoric which seeks to paint all non-atheists as one homogeneous group who are inherently stupid, irrational, intolerant, and literalist in their reasoning, it too becomes problematic. Now, in my opinion, if someone holds a view that another group is stupid, irrational, intolerant, or less worthy, you know, either way, if it's a Christian or an atheist, it doesn't matter to me, that is not problematic to me. A person can believe whatever they want to believe. He doesn't come right out and call it, intolerance, except at the beginning of the comment. He goes on to kind of voice it as being problematic, and I think he's linking that to the intolerance that he mentioned earlier. But the truth is, although he may perceive it as problematic, it's not intolerant. You can believe that people are less worthy than you, that their belief systems are less worthy than yours, and you are not intolerant so long as you are permitting these other people to express their belief, and you're not forcing your beliefs or your opinions onto other people.
One of the things that's a problem is that a lot of people end up personalizing this, and it's understandable because we're talking about, in many cases, core beliefs, and it kind of makes up who you are and everything. But I can very easily say that I hold someone's particular belief to be stupid, irrational, that it's not logical, it's not reasonable, there's no evidence for it, that they are making a bad decision, and their decision-making process that allows them to actually believe that is corrupt, and all these things, without actually saying this person is stupid or this person is an idiot. I can say that they're behaving irrationally, and one of the things that, is that kind of gets overlooked is the idea that obviously I think people can change. And having changed my own mind, I don't think that religious people are stupid as an inherently stupid, ignorant person or anything like that. I think that they've bought into something, an idea which I consider to be stupid, and they may have good reasons for it, or at least under their own system of determining what's true and what's not, they've justified it in some way. So we need to be able to separate whether or not when someone is attacking ideas or attacking a person.
Correct.
And then whether or not there's justification for attacking the ideas, whether or not just disagreeing and pointing
Right.
out where you disagree doesn't qualify as intolerance.
Correct. And I would say, though, that although I don't promote and endorse attacking a person, that even if I say to you, I believe you're a stupid person, that is not intolerance. That in itself does not mean intolerance, because I'm not stopping you from doing anything. I'm not stopping you from thinking. I'm simply saying, I think you're an idiot. And that is an opinion, and people have a right to express their opinion, and it doesn't, people expressing their opinion, even if it might be hurtful to someone, that is not stopping the person they're talking to from engaging in opinions, beliefs, actions that they would like to believe. Knowing that someone thinks what I'm doing is stupid doesn't stop me from doing whatever I want to do. So it's not the same as intolerance. You can call it mean, you can call it vicious, you can call it wrong, but you can't call it intolerance and be correct. I went to a site that has something called the Urban Dictionary, and I want to just say that I'm not pulling this as any sort of official definition. The reason I went here is because this allows people to define terms sort of from a slang or human perspective, where they just go on and they define it. And so what I'm using this for is to give sort of a on-the-street definition of what people basically said, this is what we think. It's not Webster, this is not, any kind of, no one with a degree in English has put this definition out. It's not an authoritative definition, but it does reflect how people view this. And this first definition is for atheism, they had two definitions. They had aggressive atheist and passive atheist. And the aggressive atheist, people had defined as a person who attacks other religions and is often intolerant to the follower of the other religions, often brings up the insensitive fact that faith is the complete acceptance of a God without proof, somewhat equitable to ignorance, which, among other things, is the complete acceptance of an idea without proof. So what's really strange about this definition is, number one, they're, again, defining an insult as being intolerant, which that's a confusion, because insulting someone is not the same as stopping them from doing something. And the other problem with this definition is that it says that if you're sensitive to something, but it's a fact, it's wrong for someone else to bring it up. So in other words, I can't dialogue about a topic and opinion, in open public dialogue, if I point out that faith, and they're calling it the fact that faith is, synonymous with ignorance, why shouldn't someone be able to say that? Like, why should that not be something you can say without being labeled as a bigot or an intolerant person? Why can't you express your opinion openly and let somebody else just simply express theirs? And I'm not even saying that I guess I'm not even saying that it would be wrong to say, I think the person's intolerant, I think they're a bigot. I think that it would be, technically incorrect to call the person intolerant, but as far as would I arrest you for saying it? No. Say it.
Well, one of the things comes down to the definition of intolerance.
Right, we're going to
there
get
is
to
this
that.
idea, and if you mean by, and not you, I mean by whoever's saying this, if you mean intolerance is somebody who will not sit idly by while being, accosted with whatever silliness somebody happens to provide, then okay, yeah, I'm intolerant in that sense. For example, on the website for the ironchariots.org, there's a forum where people have discussions, and there's a Christian person who's one of the oddest esoteric Christians I've ever met, but he posts what his beliefs are, and we have discussions. And one of the things is that I have zero tolerance for somebody who just makes stuff up. So when that happens, I point out that they've done this, and I'm not going to let them get away with it. So in that sense, I'm intolerant of a certain behavior in that I won't allow that at the forum. I won't allow it to go unchecked. In actuality, they get to still do it.
Right, and that to me is the line.
Right.
You're not intolerant. You're saying I'm not intolerant in the sense that I don't allow it. Well, to me, that says you're tolerant. Period.
Well,
but
in
I understand
one
what you're
sense,
saying is that you're going to respond to it.
well, and one of the responses may end up being banning, eventually, banning this person from,
Right.
and that would be an intolerance.
Yes.
But much in the same way that there are times when discrimination
Right.
is justified, and there are times when censorship is justified, there are times when
Right.
intolerance is justified.
Right, and we're going to discuss that. I mean, it's actually coming up pretty quickly that, what are the expectations regarding tolerance in our society, and do people have realistic expectations about what tolerance should be and how it should be
Right.
employed? The next thing with atheism, the second definition was the passive tolerant atheist, and the Urban Dictionary says that's someone who does not believe in a supreme being but accepts that others do. And to be honest with you, I think every atheist that does not believe in a supreme being understands and accepts that others do. I mean, that's a reality.
Yeah, I've never met anybody.
Yeah,
like,
there's nobody I know who says, I just don't accept that other people believe
I don't
this."
believe in God, and I can't believe any of you do either. I've never met that person.
But this passive atheist also does not usually bring up the above fact unless attacked for being an atheist. So in other words, the atheist who says anything about their atheism is an aggressive, intolerant atheist unless they're getting attacked by a Christian. So basically, I can't dialogue about my belief. I can never express it unless somebody comes and attacks me for it, is what this is saying. It's saying that if I just dialogue about my beliefs, about what I don't believe, that's being aggressive and intolerant, which is completely
Shame on you.
nuts. It is shame on you. I mean, when you say that an open discourse, when a person can't express their opinion without being labeled intolerant, that we're walking a fine line at that point.
Yeah.
And anyway, it doesn't matter if the person is insensitive. It's just about whether or not they're trying to stop you. Well, then I went and actually looked up real definitions so that we're going to get into some things here. Bigotry is defined as a stubborn and complete intolerance of any creed, belief, or opinion that differs from one's own. So basically, a completely intolerant person regarding a specific issue, even doesn't have to be completely intolerant to everything, but complete intolerance is what defines a bigot. And complete intolerance is going to include stopping people or attempting to stop people from behaving or believing in whatever they want to behave like or believe. Respect is got two definitions, and sometimes these are confused in dialogues about respect of belief. There's one definition that says esteem for or a sense of the worth or excellence of a person, a personal quality or ability, or something considered as a manifestation of a personal quality or ability. In other words, I have great respect for her judgment. The second definition means to refrain from intruding upon or interfering with, as in to respect a person's privacy. In the public court, respect generally means allowing someone to do it. Respecting your privacy means that I allow you to have your privacy. It doesn't mean that I esteem it or that I consider it worthy or excellent. I may not like the fact that you have privacy, but if I allow it, I am respecting it in regard to definition 2.
Yeah.
What most Christians who attack atheists of being disrespectful, when they define them as disrespectful to the Christian belief, usually what they mean when you dialogue with them further is that you don't consider their belief worthy of excellence. Now, in my opinion, asking for that kind of respect is not a realistic or a practical thing to ask for. I can believe whatever I want to believe, but for me to expect the rest of the world to accept my beliefs as excellent is kind of ridiculous, because there are people who hold completely different opinions than me, and I don't expect those people to think that my views are excellent. If they did, they would hold my views. So when someone, because we have a diverse society with diverse opinions and diverse ideas and beliefs and even behaviors, it's really not logical to expect someone that when I express a view, that it's going to go unchallenged. People are not going to respect it. There's going to be people who think I'm an idiot for holding my views. It doesn't matter, because as long as they allow me to hold them, they're respecting them in the only sense that matters, which is the legal definition of, how we legally look at respect, which is allowing something. And no one has respect with regard to the first definition for all ideas, because there are people who have the idea that it's okay to have sex with underage, with small children. And I don't think that there are a lot of people in this nation who respect that idea. And
In either sense.
what do you mean? Oh, yeah,
Well, yeah.
correct. We wouldn't allow it, and we also tend to
We don't think it's a good
not
idea.
think it's worthy of excellence. So there's
We're
no
fairly
one,
intolerant against pedophiles.
we're very intolerant, and I think that's a good thing. But with the idea, though, of saying that I should esteem somebody's beliefs is just not realistic. But to say that I should allow them is absolutely realistic with regard to some things we're going to talk about later. Tolerance is defined also in two ways that are extremely close. One says a fair, objective, and permissive attitude towards those whose opinions, practices, race, religion, nationality, etc. differ from one's own, freedom from bigotry. The second definition says a fair, objective, and permissive attitude towards opinions and practices that differ from one's own. So one is about an attitude toward people, and one is about an attitude toward the opinions that people hold. Tolerance, then, is being fair, objective, and permissive. And what I think about that is that tolerance, first of all, in either definition, does not require respect. So I don't have to respect you to tolerate you. It only requires permissiveness and an unbiased view. Bias is hard to identify, and it's much harder to identify than permissiveness. It can be difficult to prove or even recognize bias, but permissiveness is simple. I either allow for someone else's opinions and practices, or I don't. I think it's easy to illustrate that when it comes to allowing people freedom to believe and act as they choose, atheists aren't inhibiting anyone. In fact, they are most often accused of hindering religious people with regard to the religious person's perceived right to infringe on the beliefs and practices of those who choose to think and act outside the regulations and restrictions of their religion. That's a long sentence, and I apologize for that. But basically, as Matt sums it up, is if someone's beating someone else over the head with a stick and I tell them to stop, I am not infringing on their rights. I'm not being intolerant. I am basically saying that everyone has a right to behave and everyone should be tolerated. But if you're running around stopping everyone and being intolerant and not permitting people to do things they have a right to do, then yes, you need to be stopped. And I'm not tolerating that, but that's a sense in which I think intolerance should be exercised. I don't tolerate people stepping on someone else's legal constitutional rights. And there's no one who's 100% tolerant, and that's what Matt was just talking about. If we were, there'd be no laws. So the question becomes, is it proper to impose my personal beliefs onto others outside of what is necessary for harmonious societal interaction, simply because I personally subscribe to those beliefs? So in other words, if someone has a constitutional right and I subscribe to a belief system, I join a club or a group or a religious group, it doesn't even have to be religious, I join something that have restrictions. And the example I think I used initially was Alcoholics Anonymous. I join AA and I decide I'm not going to drink anymore. Well, do I have a right to impose that on other people and say no one else can drink now because I joined AA and I think it's wrong for me to drink? Well, of course not. People would think that's absurd. And yet this is what happens with regard to religion in the United States.
Well, in fairness, while people would think it was absurd, we did have this thing called prohibition.
Yes, but it wasn't because of AA.
Which turned out really, really badly.
Yes, it did. It's
That's
very
what
hard.
happens when you try to impose your personal beliefs upon everybody. Your
Right.
freedom and rights end where everyone else's began.
And I also want to note that in the year that Prohibition was repealed, which I think was 1933, they also repealed the ban on the book Ulysses by James Joyce. And to me, this is significant because it was a recognition of people's rights to do what is constitutionally allowable and for other groups to not infringe on the legal rights that are provided here in the United States. And banning a book and burning a book, which they did burn it, those books were unloaded at the docks, they were confiscated right at the dock, taken and destroyed. You can't ban a book in this country. This is.
Well, you can't ban a book. You can't ban a book in this day and age anyway because of the
But they
internet,
try. They're still trying. It's
Sure.
like that was 1933, and they're still trying to ban books in the United States.
Yeah.
To me, this is just absurd. I can't believe this even goes on, but it does. There's a quote here by, actually it was interesting, it's Pat Boone wrote an article. And one of the quotes that was really disturbing to me He says that while, he's talking about atheists, while they're certainly entitled to their views, maybe it's time to tell the 14%, he's talking about atheists versus non-atheists in the United States, maybe it's time to tell the 14% to shut up and get over it. While the Constitution guarantees their right to hold and express whatever views they wish, the Constitution also guarantees majority rule. We have rights too, even if a minority of America objects. Okay.
See, this is proof that Pat is a moron.
Right.
See, that's an attack on the person.
Right.
I didn't just say Pat believes stupid things. I said Pat is a moron. So I will stoop to the
Right.
kind of polemic ad hominems on occasion. Here's the reason. Well, you go ahead.
Okay, because I was going to say,
touch
you know,
on it
and I'll just say that, like, in my own expression of that same idea, I would probably say that Pat is ignorant of the democratic process and what that entails.
And the Constitution?
Correct, which is what I mean. First of all, telling others to shut up is intolerance, in that it is not permissive of the opinions of others, and it is bigoted in that it is complete intolerance toward another's opinion. But further, his representation of the democratic process as majority rule is incorrect, because he fails to recognize that laws supported and passed by the majority that restrict individual rights and freedoms provided to the U.S. citizens under the Constitution are not legal laws, and they will fail to be upheld in the courts if challenged. But let's examine his statement about atheists trying to hold society hostage by doing things like removing under God from the pledge. And that goes back, I think I may have not read his initial statement, where he says, earlier in his quote, he says, "A belief in God is still central to the lives of most Americans, 86% according to one recent poll. That hasn't stopped a vocal minority, however, from trying to hold society hostage to its narrow views, agitating for government to remove the words 'In God We Trust' from our coins and 'Under God' from the pledge."
Yeah, because it's a narrow view to try and put things back the way they were before you guys decided to push your religion on everybody else. That's narrow-minded.
Well, here I want to examine his point about under God from the pledge and what it means to have it in there and what it means to take it out. Pat's attitude was so inspiring to many believers that he was paraphrased in a chain email that is making the rounds to this day that says, "It is that 86% of Americans believe in God. Therefore, I have a very hard time understanding why there is such a mess about having 'In God We Trust' on our money and having God in the Pledge of Allegiance. Why don't we just tell the 14% to sit down and shut up?" In the U.S., this is me talking now, in the U.S., every child should understand the problem with saying that any segment should be silenced by the majority. Freedom of speech is a recognized right that doesn't mean you have a right, it doesn't mean I have a right to be heard, but I absolutely have the right to express myself. You don't have to listen to it, you don't have to like it, you can turn the channel, but I have a right to say it. Telling me that I don't have a right to say it, or that I need to not be saying it, or that, you know, someone needs to shut me up, that's not tolerance. And luckily in this country it's not legal, and I hope that it remains that way, you know, despite the fact that there's many people that would like to see me shut up. I'm glad that I have a right to speak. I appreciate that right, and I will defend that right. But let's look at the pledge. The Pledge of Allegiance was written for a popular children's magazine called Youth's Companion, and it was written by a socialist author and Baptist minister named Francis Bellamy in 1892. In 1954, 62 years later, Congress, after a campaign by the Knights of Columbus, which is a Catholic organization, added the words "Under God" to the pledge. The pledge was now both a patriotic oath and a public prayer. And now my opinion on that is that Christians inserted a statement about religion into what had been a patriotic oath for U.S. citizens. Now any Christian wishing, or any citizen wishing to express the Pledge of Allegiance also has to express allegiance to a monotheistic God. But according to Pat, it's atheists who are holding the U.S. hostage by asking that a national pledge not force people to acknowledge a narrowly defined God that millions of U.S. citizens do not advocate. And this includes millions of people who believe in God, who do not accept, some of them accept multiple gods, and some of them accept a different vision of God. And we're going to get into this maybe a little bit more too if we have time, that this very much is the Christian God. And Christians see it that way, that the God expressed in the pledge excludes gods of other religions. As a Christian personally, you may not feel that way, but believe me, there's a huge number of Christians that would disagree with you and who will go to the wall to say that the God in the pledge is Jehovah God.
And even if it's not,
Right. It's
even
still
if you made some argument that it was kind of this global, fuzzy, doesn't mean anybody's religion God, it still has no business there.
It doesn't. And that's the next thing is, why should such divisive language have been added to the pledge to begin with, except to promote the idea that one religious view is superior to all other religious views? And yet atheists who object to this are the ones who are being cast as intolerant, attempting to hold the U.S. hostage by saying it's wrong to make the pledge a statement of national intolerance.
You know, and the one thing that I've said on several occasions is that is one of the greatest notes of irony in the history of the world, that they inserted the two most divisive words you could come up with right before the word indivisible.
Right.
So you got under God, indivisible. Hey, wait a minute, didn't anybody, maybe we could have put that somewhere else so that it wasn't so pathetically sad.
Right.
And this knee-jerk fear of a communist world. Oh, and let's not even go down the road of the
Right.
atheists and communist links that people try to make. But what it did was it propelled, mainstream America to, oh no, let's show those godless commies and we'll slap God onto everything. And we stick it in the pledge. And while it was on some coins in the 19th century, we adopted it as a national motto in the mid-50s and go putting it on every piece of money that we have. It's, where atheists aren't keeping anybody hostage. We didn't change this stuff.
Well, yeah, and the rest of this, removing under God is not something that only atheists support.
Right.
There are religious groups in the U.S. who support the separation of church and state as well. But removing the words does not constitute promoting atheism. It neutralizes the pledge into a statement of national loyalty without imposing a statement of religious loyalty as well. In fact, if atheists were intending to promote atheism in the pledge, they'd be asking to change the words to one nation without a God. But they are not asking for an atheist view to be promoted. They want only that no one's religious leanings be promoted or furthered using a national pledge, which should be inclusive and support as many diverse citizens as possible.
I tell you what, if atheists ever become the majority, and some atheist argues that we should change the pledge to say one nation without a God, I'll oppose it. That's stupid.
Right.
The government's position with regard to religion should be no comment, no interference. You guys handle it amongst yourselves. The only time they should bother is when they need to settle a legal dispute with, regard to a couple of religions or whatever. We shouldn't be having under God or God this, or prayers before, Senate meetings and Supreme Court, opinions. Just leave religion out of it, because all you're doing is, while I'm no fan of religion, you're screwing religion up, and you're screwing up the government by mixing these two. They don't need to go together. There's no need for it.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm so intolerant today.
That's okay. It's not intolerance.
Oh, yes, it's not. As a reminder...
It's discourse. It's public discourse.
As a reminder, we did have the phone number up. We've got one caller line, which we'll try to get to shortly. But we will be going to dinner after the program. I know we've only got less than an hour left now, so I wanted to make sure we get that out, that we are going to IHOP at the corner of I-35 and Cesar Chavez from 5 to 7 o'clock. So anybody who wants to come down, any atheist or atheist-friendly person is welcome to join us.
Okay.
That announcement's done.
All right. There was a fairly notorious episode of Palazan Now.
Yeah.
That was fairly well circulated, I think, in atheist blogs and among atheists, where she invited some Christians on to talk about why America hates atheists.
No.
Was it? Oh, what was it?
The topic was, why do atheists inspire such hatred?
Okay.
They got it wrong from the get-go by assuming that it's the atheist's fault, that they're the ones who are inspiring the hatred.
That's a fair point.
And they brought 3 Christians on, 2 of them who I think could possibly be the Antichrist if I believed that.
Yeah. And it was sad that there was not an atheist included, but I think she made up for it in a later episode where she invited an atheist on to speak.
One of the ones who would qualify as a potential Antichrist isn't actually a Christian. She's Jewish.
Oh, that's right.
She's the turncoat Jew who, well, I'll let you get
Well,
to
Karen
it.
Hunter was one of the guests, and she's a journalism professor at Hunter College in New York, as well as a Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist. And having studied journalism for a while in college, I was shocked to hear
that she was
Karen
actually
Hunter,
an ignorant ghoul?
No, I was shocked to hear her so anti-free speech. And I think that's what stunned me, is that somebody involved in journalism would not be doing everything they could to promote the right of free speech rather than denigrate it. What she said was, don't impose upon my right to want to have prayer. Well, this isn't, I think this quote doesn't specifically go to that, so maybe I should, wait on that. But what she said in this quote was, don't impose upon my right to want to have prayer in schools, to want to say the Pledge of Allegiance, to want to honor my God. Don't infringe upon that right.
Okay, we won't.
Exactly.
You can want all you want.
My question was, what about non-religious or non-Christian people who want to say the pledge? Why was it changed to purposely only reflect the views of monotheistic Americans? And regarding prayer in school, what Karen means here is not the right for a Christian to pray individually in a school. She means the right to have all the students, regardless of their religious leanings or the religious leanings of their families, engage in group public prayer in a public school where children from diverse religious backgrounds attend. I don't know of anyone who's promoting that a child not be allowed to say a personal prayer in school so long as it is not disruptive to the school's goals. But when Christians such as Karen speak about prayer in school, they don't mean their right to pray in a school, which nobody is threatening.
There was this Religious Tolerance Act that came out to help encourage school children to have the right to inject religion into their answers on tests and other stuff. We talked about it a little bit. And what you always hear from Christians like Karen or whatever, and I don't know how much of it is ignorance of the facts and how much of it is actually spinning. But what they'll say is, oh, you've got, these godless atheists like Madalyn Murray O'Hair who removed prayer from school. No, they didn't. They removed mandatory, compulsory, school-led prayer from school. Your kid can still pray. Your kid can still join a Campus Crusade for Christ group. Your kid can still have a Bible club. Your kid can still tote around a Bible and talk to his friends and pray before tests and clog up God's inbox because he didn't study. Feel free. Nobody's trying to stop that. So please stop representing, it's a lie.
Yeah.
It's a lie to say that this is what people are trying to do. Oh, they're trying to corrupt our schools and take God out of our school. Hey, I thought you believed God was everywhere. How could we possibly invoke a law that would remove God from school?
Right, and that's my point at the end of this for Karen, was in a situation where one group of Christians is attempting to impose their religion onto people outside of their religious persuasion, and where atheists are saying everyone should have the right to pray or not to pray as they choose, somehow it's the atheist who is exhibiting intolerance.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what blows my mind. It's like down the line when I examine these issues, atheists aren't being intolerant. They're saying, look, all the views should be tolerated. And it's the Christians who are saying atheists are intolerant for trying to get the Christians to back off and quit imposing the Christian view onto people of other religions and people of no religion. Another person on the Paula Zahn panel was Debbie Schlussel, and she's a conservative columnist who said on Paula Zahn, I think the real discrimination is atheists against Americans who are religious. I really believe that they're the ones who are intolerant against Christians. They are on the attack. It's obnoxious, and they need to shut up. Again, just silence this group. Somebody please silence this group. Tell this group not to talk anymore. Tell them not to express their opinions, not to express their views. We don't want any dissent here. Just shut up. We just quit dissenting. This is so un-American. It's so anti-Constitution. It is it shreds freedom of speech. So, short of trying to pass a law to shut me up, this is as bad as it can get. Again, she's telling people who disagree with you that they should not express their views and opinions, and she's saying that, telling people who disagree with you that they should not express their views and opinions is intolerant. Atheists are not accused of being intolerant because they believe opinions should not be expressed. Atheists are labeled intolerant when they indicate that if an opinion is expressed, correct or incorrect, it should expect to be met with opposing views. In other words, if I hold an opinion and I express it publicly, it is a reality that I will be expected to defend that opinion in the face of opposing opinions, based on the huge diversity in our society. People who disagree with me and who are willing and able to express why they disagree are not being intolerant, even if their mode of expression is rude or insulting. As long as they're allowing me to speak, to hold an opinion, and to act in accordance with my beliefs, they are not being intolerant. Open public discourse and dissent is healthy. It allows opinions to be examined and questioned so that everyone can make an informed decision about which beliefs they believe are most valid. There's nothing wrong with it. You can talk, you can disagree, you can even be rude about it. You know, I don't have to dialogue with you if you're rude and I don't like that. I'm free to cut that off and say I refuse to communicate with you until you can stop being rude to me. But that doesn't, being rude is not the same as being intolerant. And that's kind of what I'm trying to point out here, is that the accusations of intolerance are being levied at a group who's not trying to stop anyone from doing anything, and the group levying the accusation keeps being intolerant down the line.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of weird irony to this that's just difficult for me to wrap my brain around. Let's see, Stephen Smith was an ESPN analyst and a sports columnist for Philadelphia Inquirer, who also somehow ended up on the atheist panel for Palazan, even though he's a believer. He said, and he was probably the one voice of semi-reason on the program, he says, but the reality is that you're entitled to believe what you want as long as you're not imposing your beliefs on other people. And I applaud Stephen for that. He then went on to say, I don't think they need to shut up. He's talking about the atheists. The reason why I don't think they need to shut up is because there's a whole bunch of people in this world that we can look at and say they need to shut up, and they certainly don't. You know, you can't force someone to shut up. You might not like what they're saying, but they have a right to say it, and you need to accept that, and I need to accept that. There's people that disagree with me, and I'm okay with that. It's fine.
That's about the only thing that we can applaud Stephen Smith for, though. Unfortunately, that's about all he got to say, really. He did make one other comment where he'd said that he didn't really believe that atheists were being persecuted or losing jobs. This all followed a news story about a family that had basically been forced to move, and they're not the only ones, by the way. You can read an article in one of the American Atheist magazine about the Smolkowski family as well, where they had problems with regard to prayers before basketball games. And you know, the fact is that we live in this country where, sure, 80, 85, whatever percent happen to have one particular type of belief, and a good chunk of those are fearful and intolerant of those who don't. We talked about it on the last Nonprofits a little bit. There's this new group who's producing a television commercial that is anti-atheist, and the whole reason that they're doing it is because they are fearful that this new popularity of atheism, with books from Dawkins and Hitchens and Harris and Dennett and whoever else, Vic Stinger, who was on the show, that this popularity is going to threaten their way of life. That when the atheists actually become the majority, they'll have to be, they'll have like secret prayer closets that they'll have to go to. No, sorry. I've been a supporter of true religious freedom across the board when I was a Christian, and now that I'm not. As much as I despise Fred Phelps, for example, he's got every right to go be an ass in front of these people's funerals if he wants to. While I don't agree with him at all on his positions, but I do agree that he has the right to hold them and to express them, and that his rights only end where somebody else's begin. That's where we start drawing lines. But I'm not aware of any atheist, and I know people would lump Dawkins in there, but I can assure you that as far as I know, this isn't true, who want to make religion illegal. I mean, that's asinine. Because anybody who's given it a moment's thought, you realize that that's not just thought crime legislation, it's the particular ridiculous, unenforceable thought crime legislation, because no law ever written can control, like I said before, whether or not you kick out of school, but also what goes on in your head. I can't make a law that ensures that you don't believe that, pixies whisper in your ears in the morning. Maybe they do. Maybe you believe that, but no law. It's now illegal to believe in Jesus. Does that mean you're going to stop? I mean, it's illegal to drive more than 65 miles an hour on the road out in front of my house, but people do it all the time. You cannot control what goes on in somebody's head. So please don't. I mean, I realize. I think what you're really afraid of, and yes, I'm speaking directly to all of you Christians out there who are fearful, is that you'll lose your majority and your power base, and you won't get to run around being all self-righteous and controlling what everybody else gets to do. But that's just my intolerant suspicions creeping out.
Okay. Real quickly, I think we might be able to wrap this in the next 10 minutes or so and maybe get to some of these calls.
Okay.
This is a quote from Bill O'Reilly.
Oh boy.
Yeah, and this was to an atheist Eagle Scout named Daryl Lambert. And the quote is, "I want to quote this. On my honor, I will do my best to do my duty to God and to my country and obey Scout law." On and on and on and on. I mean, God's in the first 10 words, so why did you have to tell them you were an atheist if you didn't have any trouble reading the oath? Why didn't you just shut up? Again, atheists, why don't you just shut up? And why don't you just shut up that you had to say this oath and that it talks about God? And, the Eagle Scouts would have kept you in if you just would have hidden your atheism and pretended to be, believe in God, then you could have stayed in. And, now that you've said that you're an atheist, you're having trouble with the Eagle Scouts, why didn't you just keep your mouth shut? Don't ask, don't tell. Pretend to believe in God and everything's cool.
Well, the one other thing, and I'm just saying this just to be nice, is that somebody needs to tell Bill to take his shoes off because God doesn't appear in the first 10 words. It's the 14th word.
Okay.
Just minor correction there. I mean, if you're going to be stupid, at least be correct about what you're being stupid about.
Right. But my thing is, Bill O'Reilly has taken tack that many people take, which is, it's such a small thing. Why can't you just say the oath? It's just words. And here's my response to that. Again, what if atheists inserted the words "one nation without a God" into the pledge and then told Christians to just read the pledge and shut up about their Christianity? First of all, how well do you imagine that would really go over? But more importantly, would you consider that to be right? I mean, would you consider that to be a right thing to do, for me to impose my beliefs onto somebody else, make them say it, tell them to shut up about their beliefs?
Yeah.
I personally don't think that's okay to do. I wouldn't do that to someone else, and I don't like it when someone else does it to me.
Now, in defense of this issue with Bill O'Reilly and the Atheist Eagle Scout, the Eagle Scouts, the Scouts, they're a private organization, and they have the right to refuse membership to anybody. My problem with that is that they refuse membership to atheists and homosexuals, and yet they take plenty of government handouts, right down to like having their Scout Jamboree, the use of this land for like $1 or something ridiculous like that. It's fine. You can be whatever kind of bigoted, hateful, eccentric, members-only club you want. You can form your KKK wannabe group, but you can't take government money. And that's where the problem with the Scouts comes in, because they have this exclusionary policy, and yet they still benefit from the funds that the people they're excluding contribute by way of taxes and other, contributions, etc. So, and plus, they're lauded by the government. I mean, the president brings them all out after he goes and speaks to the Boy Scout Jamboree and pins medals on them and has them all come up here, and you guys are good, honorable citizens of the United States, and you represent America's finest in morality. And no, they don't. They're a bunch of kids who I hope are learning things and having a really good time, but they've been sucked into this organization, which is hateful. It's this, the bigotry, they're not really being taught in much the same way that a homeschooler isn't being taught the ways of other people. And I'm not picking on homeschoolers. I've gotten enough letters about picking on homeschoolers.
Okay. Anyway, I've got some examples. This is all from just the past month. So this is July's list of intolerance. And the first one is from USA Today, from the July 19th edition. In the United States, J.K. Rowling's book tours have attracted thousands of screaming children, but also death threats. Some Christians have called for the books to be banned, claiming they promote witchcraft. Telling somebody to stop doing what they're doing or you're going to kill them is intolerance. Okay, that qualifies as intolerance. In the Houston Chronicle, a Cyprus man charged in the death of a Southwest Airlines flight attendant said Saturday that he was doing God's work when he went to a Montrose area bar last month hunting for a gay man to kill, which he successfully pulled off. This is from July 15th, and I just want to say that killing someone you disagree with qualifies as intolerance. Reuters.
I'm pretty sure that one.
Yeah, Reuters.com on July 12th said 3 protesters disrupted a prayer by a Hindu chaplain on Thursday at the opening of a U.S. Senate hearing, calling it an abomination and shouting slogans about Jesus Christ. While you're allowed to have your opinion, shouting over someone else where they can't express their own is intolerance. These particular people did interrupt him to the point that he had to stop, and they had to be removed from the Senate chambers. And I just want to note, as a follow-up to that particular article, that the Interfaith Conference of Metropolitan Washington issued a statement on July 17th saying its members were deeply saddened by the interruption, and also saddened that no senators present spoke out against it publicly. So, you know, this is not good. This is not tolerant. You know, the Senate chambers is no place for people to start freaking out to the point that security has to drag them out of there because somebody's giving a Hindu prayer. I don't think they should have any prayers in there, but I wasn't there screaming at the guy and trying to shut him up. I wasn't calling him an abomination and saying that, you know, only atheists should be allowed to talk in the Senate.
Although I am working hard to make sure that we get to deliver one of those prayers. I think that would be perfect.
Okay. Anyway, ISCON is actually another group that issued a statement. It's ISKCON. They said, we call on you, they wrote to the senators, we call on you to follow the examples set by Reed, which I guess was a person involved, and take a stance in defense of religious freedom and equality in the face of opposition from extremists and fundamentalists. 7/10, July 10th, Denver Post. University of Colorado police are investigating a series of threatening messages and documents emailed to and slipped under the door of evolutionary biology labs on the Boulder campus. There were no overt threats to anybody specifically by name, Weissly said, who was one of the cops involved. It basically said anybody who doesn't believe in our religious belief is wrong and should be taken care of. Atheists ridicule things like the Creation Museum, and atheists are called intolerant for ridiculing things. But there are no news items about atheists sending thinly veiled death threats to the proprietors. It is mainly Christians calling atheists in the U.S. intolerant, and it is mainly Christians trying to silence opposing views and behaviors that are outside of their Christian belief system. Now, that in no way, when I make a statement like that, it's very easy for someone to say, hey, you're generalizing. But let me say, if you make the statement that horses run in the Kentucky Derby, that's not generalizing that every horse runs in the Kentucky Derby. I understand not all Christians are sending death threats out, but I also understand that most of the time when someone gets a death threat in this country for violating someone's religious belief, it's a Christian who sent it. And that's not it's not just like a coincidence. There's a reason for that.
Yeah, facts aren't intolerant.
Right.
By the way, we've got a line that's messed up, so we should probably go ahead and try and take this
sure.
one so we can get it cleared off for the other ones. Steve, you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Hey, how you doing?
I am enjoying your the definition of respect and tolerance discussion, and something that I think most comments from atheists, either in books and in public, and even conversation and arguments, in effect, are replies to something that was directed at them. And maybe it's not 100%, but I think most of the time it's a reply. And the presumption that somebody makes, if they come up to you and say, hey, can I speak to you for a few minutes about my religion? If I say yes, I should also say, as long as after I listen to you, you will listen to me when I reply to you about the same topic.
Yeah.
And I think that when you do reply, it surprises them, and they're not thinking about that equality of conversation, and it hits them, and it strikes them as being incredibly intolerant.
Yes.
When really they actually, it was like, look, you assumed I have got a problem that needs to be fixed, which in a sense is presumption of some problem with me. I mean, I could become insulted at that right off the bat. But if I accept the conversation, it'd be nice if we could stop and go, well, let's break. Before we go on, make sure we're both agreeing to listen to each other. And then when we have the conversation, right, the respect will be there in one of the definitions you had of respect for the right for the conversation to go on.
Right.
Yeah.
And same thing in the book. Even people like Richard Dawkins and some of these people that write books that are they strike people as being quite provocative of making fairly strong statements
They're still responding.
Right.
They wouldn't have been made if a whole bunch of other statements hadn't been made in the public space, and he
Absolutely.
wouldn't bother.
They're responses to a situation.
You know, that's a really good, you're bringing up a really good point. We got an email just this week from somebody who asked, why don't you invite a theologian on to debate you on the program? And part of my response was that, you know, Christianity has their theology all over the place. You can't miss it. Their argument is out there, you know, on dedicated religious channels. They have huge amounts of money. They have billboards. I mean, I don't feel like in our hour-and-a-half show we need to dedicate time to having Christians come on and explain their stance.
Although we open
You know,
phone lines, so they're more than
yeah,
welcome to call in.
But my point is, it's exactly what you're saying. It's like what we're doing here is the response.
Yep.
I don't need to have
Right.
someone come on and explain the Christian stance because everybody's familiar with it because they've explained it so openly, so well, and so pervasively, and this is a response to that.
The word evangelical, I'm not an expert on it, but part of my comprehension of it is it includes a responsibility to go find people and turn them into Christians.
Yeah.
Right, proselytizing.
Yep.
And so there is no such thing that I know of as evangelical atheists.
Right.
There's people
No, I'm
who
about as
argue.
close as you'll find, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there are everything exists somewhere, but
Yeah.
it's anyway. Thanks for having a very
Sure.
interesting show.
Thanks, Steve.
Bye.
Yeah, we're gonna. Eric,
Yes.
hey, how you doing?
How you doing? I watch your show, you know, now, and I think it's all right show. I'm not calling to be
Can we
judgmental.
turn it up?
I'm not calling to be judgmental or anything like that. I just want to know why don't y'all believe that there is a God?
Because I don't see any evidence or reason to do so.
I mean, what kind of evidence are y'all looking for? I mean.
Well, here you go. For example, I believe in this mug.
Right.
Okay, here it is. I believe in it.
Oh, so because you don't see them, then that's
No.
why you don't
It's not
believe.
just visual. You know, I believe in germs that they can make people ill, or I believe in electrons because you can do an experiment that shows them manifest. I mean, things that
Right.
exist are things that manifest, and if God manifests, then we should be able to observe God.
Okay. Well, I know that y'all don't believe in the Bible, but all this is in the Bible. Even what's happening right now, y'all show is in
Okay.
the Bible.
My show's in the Bible?
I mean, like, making the point that there's not no God, talking against God.
Yeah, I'm aware of this.
Yeah.
I'm aware that, you know, the Bible says that I'm a fool. My question is, I think the point that I'd make is that you're asking the wrong question. It's not so much why wouldn't you believe? Because the default position for any claim, no matter what it is not belief until proven wrong. It's disbelief until the claim is justified. So the better question isn't why wouldn't we believe, but what is it? Why do you believe? What reason is there for you to believe?
Because look at the world. I mean, how we were created. I mean.
Well, hang on. I'm happy to look at the world,
You know,
but
how
your
we
next statement was
created.
how are we created? Well, you're assuming that we're created.
Yeah, the statement already assumes a God.
Well, the Bible says to have faith and believe.
Okay,
See,
the Quran
right.
says something different. Why don't you believe the Quran?
The Quran, well, because it's the difference between that and Jesus Christ. Well, that's a whole, different topic. I
No,
mean,
it's the exact topic.
Yeah.
I mean, you're just saying that you believe what the Bible says when you're ignoring the Quran and the Vedas and any other number of other scriptures. You're just dismissing him.
well, because
saying
they
that
denounced Christ, Jesus Christ. That's why
they didn't what?
they
They
denounced
denounced
Jesus Christ.
Right,
Right.
The
You know what
Vedas
I'm
don't
saying?
even mention Jesus Christ.
They don't believe in Jesus Christ.
right.
Right.
So,
that's why.
Well,
And
okay, that's called.
I'm not trying to put this on religion. You know what I'm saying? Because
No, no,
religion
no.
is man-made.
I'm talking
Well,
about what I'm talking about is.
All I
is-
want to ask and know is that if you want to know that there's a God, if He exists, just ask Him to show you.
Hang on.
That's all. That's all the advice I got.
Hang on. Two quick things. First of all, what I'm talking about is actually how you know things, how you understand things.
I believe in things. I believe in God by faith.
Hang on. Well, fine.
Right. I mean,
I don't see-
that's the whole principle of the Bible is to have faith and believe that He exists.
Do you believe in anything
Can
else?
I
I
finish?
believe in anything else. But,
Can I finish?
But we're talking about God.
Can I
though.
finish?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Can I finish?
Yes, sir.
I was a fundamentalist Christian. From the time I was 5 until well after 30, I was studying to be a minister. I have an understanding of the Bible. I was raised a Southern Baptist, and I understand that it's about faith. What I'm telling you is that what I've discovered is that faith is the permission slip that we give ourselves to believe things when belief isn't really justified. It's basically saying it's okay to believe this even though there's no good reason. And I'm telling you that that's a bad thing, that if you actually care about whether or not
So
your
you was
beliefs... Can I finish? Can I finish?
So you were studying to be a minister?
Yes.
And then now you don't believe in God?
That's correct.
Man, you the devil, man.
No. I'm the devil now. I would encourage you, as a Christian who believes in God, to go read 1 Peter 3:15, where you are ordered to be ready at all times to give the reason for why you believe. It's in there. 1 Peter 3:15, go look it up, because I asked you, and you hemmed and hawed about, oh, the Bible says this, and it's all about faith, and I'm going to disregard the others because they don't believe in Jesus. Guess what? That's called circular reasoning. If you believe the Bible because it supports Jesus and you disbelieve these others because they don't support Jesus, you've already come to the conclusion that Jesus is real without the Bible. So therefore, you can't use that to support your argument. You need to actually study a little bit of critical thinking, and you probably need to study your Bible, because unlike what some people will do, which is go around and selectively quote the things that support the positions that they want, I'm actually a fan of reading books and actually focusing on what they really mean. And I don't try and read the Bible and make excuses for what's in there to make it seem more palatable to other people. I don't make apologies for doctrines about hell and punishment, infinite punishment for finite crimes. I don't make apologies because the Bible says that we should go out and murder unruly children and stone gays to death, and now we find those objectionable, so we kind of distance ourselves from them. No, the book says what it says. It portrays the message that it portrays, and I don't need to make apologies for it. And reading the book and understanding what it says is one of the many things that led me to be an atheist in the first place. And instead of sitting around saying, well, I believe the Bible because it talks about Jesus, dig a little deeper and maybe you'll understand how somebody who was a believer could be a non-believer based on reading the Bible. But if you want to think I'm the devil, that's cool too. Granted, I don't think he exists, but at least he's cool. But anyway.
Is there another call?
Go ahead. They're taking the screening on that.
This is actually from the end of June, so it didn't quite roll into July, but it was a good one. A South Carolina library system has closed down its summer programs for young adults after receiving threats and allegations that it was trying to promote witchcraft and drug use. And the drug use that they were trying to promote was a tie-dyeing class. So they were going to have the kids tie-dye some things, and that was going to make these children heroin addicts, apparently. There was a stream of threatening anonymous phone calls plus emails. Callers made statements such as, "We're going to get you." A local reporter traced some of the signed emails to congregants of a Baptist church. The library said, if you have an anonymous call of a bomb, what do you do? Asked Library Director Marguerite Keenan, explaining her decision to cancel the YA programs. You clear the building. You close the building for the protection of the children, and it's hugely sad. My response to that is, if your religion forbids you or your family from involving yourselves in astrology or tie-dyeing, that doesn't mean that people outside your religion can't have fun with astrology or tie-dyeing. You don't have to attend the YA programs, but when you stop others from doing so, you're being intolerant. Again, threatening to hurt people or kill people if they engage in things that are perfectly legal is intolerance. Christians in this nation use the government to promote their religion and impose their religious views onto the non-Christian population, or even upon other Christians who might not agree with their form of Christianity. When you try to remove their Christian privilege, ironically, you will find yourself quickly being accused of trying to force your beliefs upon them. Likewise, if you try to state disagreement with their views, you will find yourself labeled a bigot and intolerant, even though they're the only ones who I'm very sorry. Even though they're the only ones who I'm sorry. I'm trying to figure out what I wrote here. Apparently, I've inserted a wrong word. You're going to find yourself labeled as an intolerant, even though they're the ones that are calling for other people to be silent and calling in bomb threats and trying to halt a summer youth program at a local library.
There's one big thing. Book burning is intolerance. You're putting into the book. And I found it ironic, some of these people were burning Fahrenheit 451, but, you know.
I would
that's a
say, though, that,
particular
I mean, in my
irony.
opinion, if I, for example, buy a copy of it and I burn it as a symbol, and I say I'm going to burn this book, I'm not sure that I would call that intolerance as opposed to, like I said, picking...
Symbolic intolerance.
Yeah, I don't know if there's such a thing.
Oh, I think because the
There's
only
a
reason they're
huge-
not burning the actual copies that the library has is because it would be illegal.
Well, right,
If
but-
they could do it, they would.
Right, but they aren't. See, that's the thing. To me, that line is set at, are you stopping somebody else?
Well, they're advocating the destruction. They would be advocates of intolerance.
They would be intolerant if they could, I think is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll agree with that.
Let's take one more real quick. We got Ryan.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, how you doing?
I'm all right. How about you?
Not bad,
I remember you were talking to the previous caller,
right?
and to me, I perceived what you were saying is like having a faith without ever experience anything. That's a bad thing.
Well, I mean, once you've got the experience, you no longer need faith. I mean,
Yeah, exactly.
Faith. I mean, you know, faith is believing something without justification. Once
Okay.
you have justification, faith becomes non-existent.
Right, then you're not working
Yeah,
on faith.
I agree with that because, you know, the way other people, when they hear the word faith, to them it's just like, oh, okay, like I believe this my whole life and nothing has ever happened. But, I mean, do you think yourself that people are out there that have experienced miracles?
I think there are people out there who think they've experienced miracles.
Yeah, how would you define a miracle?
Well, I mean, a miracle, like a broken bone being fixed before your eyes.
Well, doctors do that all the time. Is that a miracle?
No, like I'm talking about instant, less than a
Can
second.
you give me a definition instead of an example?
A definition of a miracle? Let me get my dictionary.
Well, I mean, whatever you think. I'm not saying it has to be like, it doesn't have to be Webster's. I'm saying, what do you call a miracle? Give me your definition.
My definition of a miracle is, let me think, like something that happens that otherwise 100% would not happen.
Would you say that it's something that defies all physical law?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So,
Anyway.
given that, I think there's people who believe that they've witnessed something that would be miraculous. I haven't, and I have no good reason to think that any of them actually have. And the reason why, we can kind of go back to like philosophers like David Hume for this, and that is, Hume's example is if somebody comes and tells me that a man has risen from the dead, the first question that I have to ask is whether it be a bigger miracle that somebody actually raised from the dead, or that this person was either deceived or intending to deceive, that they'd either made a mistake, that somebody got the facts wrong, or that they were trying to be deceptive, and that we should always discard the greater miracle and believe the lesser one. So when somebody says this guy was dead for 3 days and now he's alive, is it more miraculous that that actually happened, or that this person is either mistaken or deceptive? And I'd say obviously.
Yeah, it could be two of those things could have happened, but it's just up to the person to decide. Okay, maybe either A or B happened. Either he came alive, or either I've been deceived. And
Right.
those are the two options that every person has.
Right. Now there's this kind of famous internet site called whywon'tgodhealamputees.com, which is outstanding because if somebody had their arm cut off and we gathered around and prayed and their arm grew back in front of us, that'd be a miracle. And everybody who witnessed that would probably have some good justification to believe something miraculous happened. Now, there's still the question of what caused it. You know, we don't know for sure if it was God. Maybe they had a power crystal around their neck. So you'd have to look a little further before you could truly define cause. But witnessing a miracle, as long as it's a shared experience and it's got some confirmation. The problem is we don't find that happening anywhere, ever. Okay. All we hear are claims about it. And Mary on a tortilla, or and when a bus runs off the road, if 2 kids live, that's a miracle.
Right.
If all of them live, that's a miracle.
And I wanted to explain too, I wasn't trying to give you a hard time about the definition. It's just that when people talk about miracles, there's a huge range of what they accept as what is a miracle. And I've had people tell me, for example, that they prayed for a rainbow and they saw a rainbow and that's a miracle.
Yeah.
And to me, that's not a miracle. But so I needed to know exactly what it was that you would accept personally as, what do you define as a miracle?
But
Yeah,
to answer
okay.
one of what I think was part of the question that, at least from the description, do I think that if someone witnessed something that they would consider miraculous, if someone had an experience that unquestionably for them affirmed their religious belief, are they justified in it? Of course they are. If God shows up to you and talks to you and you are convinced that it's God, well, then you have a justification. And the only thing I can say is that I haven't had that same experience.
Yeah.
And if I did, then we could be having a different discussion.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
Right.
pretty much my point. But anyway, so like one more thing. So you guys, you're atheists.
Yeah.
Do you believe in a spiritual world?
I don't personally, but there are some
Okay.
atheists who do believe in things that I would call supernatural and unconfirmed.
Buddhists, for example, are generally atheistic because they don't believe in a God figure, but they still have these notions of supernatural karma and
Yeah.
reincarnation and other things like that. I have no belief in anything supernatural because I haven't seen any justification for it.
Okay. All right. Well, anyway, thanks for the call.
Thank
Cool.
you.
Thanks, Ryan.
All right.
Our third line's evidently broken, so.
Okay. We can go on a little bit. One of the other articles that I brought in was about 3 Burleson men who belonged to a radical Christian activist group were in the Johnson County Jail on Friday night after a church deacon caught 2 of them attempting to ignite an explosive device on Independence Day at a church under construction in North Burleson, authorities said Friday.
In a side note, which I noticed you didn't include, the reason they got caught is because their truck got stuck in the mud. They parked in the mud and
It's a
couldn't get
miracle.
out. Yeah, clearly God caused their truck to get stopped so the deacon could catch them.
Well, I'm glad their truck got stopped because, in my opinion, no one should be blowing up churches or any other buildings. But let's see. The suspects boasted about belonging to a leaderless group of 10 or 15 who share a belief that society has become too focused on self-improvement and self-gratification, has lost focus on glorification of God. They admit to being Christian and being brought up Christian, but they believe there should be one denomination and one church, not multiple denominations, Havens said. We put them in the category of domestic terrorist group. And that's pretty bold. I mean, I've seen a lot of things that I would consider domestic terrorism that were attributed to Christians in the news, but this is the first time I've actually seen them, officially categorized as that. And I do just want to point out, I mean, you have here Christians blowing up a church because they want one church. And I mean, this is just, obviously this is intolerance. I can't blow up your church. That's not correct. It's intolerant. It's illegal.
Oh, come on, please.
No, not even one.
One of the things that this group I was talking about earlier, who has put together this television commercial, that's anti-atheist television commercial, they went on to, member of the group in another commercial or whatever, went on to Richard Dawkins' forum and picked out comments from some people who had posted there and evidently thought that it was Dawkins himself saying it. So they've got this comment about a guy who's like, don't worry about it, we'll just burn down the churches. And then they take that as serious as if this person's actually going to do it. So, on the one hand, I wouldn't want to joke about things like that too much. On the other hand, lighten up. Some people can tell a joke. Some people, just because they say something, it doesn't mean you need to take it literal. And maybe you should think about that when you're reading your Bible as well as the Dawkins forums, because not everything that is literally means what it says. Okay.
Okay, and just real quickly, the last kind of note that I wanted to get out on this was an article on July 11th. This is in Los Angeles Times. Ex-Surgeon General says he was marginalized. Anything that doesn't fit into the political appointee's ideological, theological, or political agenda is ignored, marginalized, or simply buried. The idea that the Surgeon General would be censured by an administration for theological reasons is frightening to me, not only as an atheist, but as an American. I have a lot of problems with the idea that a religion is dictating what the Surgeon General is telling the nation or how they're allowed to advise the nation. That position should include a doctor who is able to give his opinions, his medical opinions, and his ideas about the health of the nation without restriction by a religion. There's a lot of people that think that atheists magnify the role of religion in government in this country, and I was certainly one of them. But the more you look at it, the more you start to realize that there's a huge influence on our government from religion, and this is a frightening thing the more you find out about it. It was to me. And it says here that he was specifically censured strongly on morally charged issues such as sexuality and drug use. When the issue of federal funding for embryonic stem cell research came up early in Bush's first term, Carmona said he felt he could play an educational role. Carmona said he was told to stand down because a decision had been made to limit federal funding for research. So they had already made their decision before consulting the Surgeon General. And we know that stem cell research is a highly charged topic in the religious community. But that shouldn't be playing a role in the Surgeon General's advisory to the nation about national health. Likewise, on the issue of preventing teen pregnancy, Carmona said he was not allowed to deviate from the administration's position that abstinence was the best approach. And I just want to say, using the government to promote religious beliefs and behaviors is an abuse of our political system. And this is me talking here. The U.S. is not a theocracy, and silencing dissent is intolerance. The Surgeon General is a person in power appointed to produce policy that affects all of the various and diverse needs of all of the various and diverse people in our nation. When he is silenced by pressure from religious adherents, we're really right back to the age of Galileo's imprisonment. A person has every right to hold personal beliefs and even to express them openly and even rudely. But when that person begins to subvert our political process and use the government as a vehicle to force his religion onto non-adherents, there really is no greater level of intolerance that I'm aware of. I just don't know how else to say it.
Yeah, apart from murdering people.
Which to me, when you start using the government to silence people,
You might as well be.
Right. That is what that to me is what happens.
Well, we got like 8 minutes left in the show. I'll do another reminder real quick that after the show's over, we'll be going down to IHOP, the corner of I-35 and Cedar Chavez. Any atheist or atheist-friendly person is welcome to join us. You don't have to be a member to come to attend, but if you're coming down to preach at us, just pick up the phone. The number's up there. We'll be up there again here in a minute. We got a couple calls on the line waiting. We got David.
Hey, guys.
How you doing?
Hey.
Doing real good. Y'all are doing great today. It's very thought-provocative.
Thanks.
Thank you.
I was calling to talk about a possible third alternative to what we call the difference between the natural and the supernatural as far as miracles are concerned.
Okay.
I've done a lot of study through the years and read a lot of, like, Hume, for example, on the one side, and then the, I guess what you would call apologists on the other side. And I've never seen what I thought to be the correct thought or argument addressed. They're always talking about the difference between what they call natural law and God stepping in with magic, so to speak, and doing what he would do. But it didn't seem to me anybody has ever really addressed the possibility of two things that we would find in between. First of all, not spiritual, but let's call them natural forces or natural laws that we have not yet discovered. For example, the abilities of the human brain for the healing of our bodies, for example, because a lot of the things that they've called miracles, on the other hand, can just be, someone's subconscious mind at work in their body.
Now, aren't you? I mean, you're making a claim about something that obviously hasn't been discovered, but what you're suggesting is like a hypothesis that there is some ability by the
that there are some laws and forces that are yet to be discovered.
I'm not convinced that we've seen any example of the human brain healing the body. We've seen the body able to heal itself through the process we understand.
What I think, though, if I understand you correctly, David, is you're saying that there may be, natural things that simply are not labeled as natural yet because we're unaware of them.
Yes, processes that happen that, he just said it, the body healing itself, and sure, I think there's ways that the body heals itself that we are not aware of yet.
Well, we don't have a full understanding of it. Sure.
I would agree with them, except I would categorize those things as natural, even though they're not understood.
I would as well.
Yeah.
But see, and like I said, I would look at it from 2 points of view. If there is a God, I would say that he doesn't just use magic and wave a hand. I would say that he also employs particular laws, particular forces that we have not yet understood,
Are you saying that you think that
and that they may be understandable at some point.
Are you saying that he's then part of the natural?
I'm sure that he doesn't consider himself to be supernatural.
Then he would be part of the natural.
Yes.
Okay, it's just a part of the natural that we don't understand or haven't discovered or whatever yet.
Correct.
Okay,
And
then,
let's see, I'm coming from both points of view. Things
Right.
that would not be a move of God, and on the other hand, sometimes would be. Okay,
And-
for example,
but hang on.
if Da Vinci had done what the Wright brothers had done, he probably would have been killed for it because the religious people would have thought that that was something wrong. You remember Da Vinci had, he was working on a flying machine.
Right. And
Had
you're
he
saying that
done
if
that,
he succeeded,
they probably would have burned him at the stake for it.
oh, I don't think so.
Oh, you don't think the religious people would have done that?
Nah.
I mean, they would have done it to Galileo had he not recanted the first time, remember?
There's a slight difference. There's a justification, at least within the
Right.
church, regarding the earth as the center of the universe. I don't recall any Bible verses that say that thou shalt not fly.
Well, some of the Puritans might have done it.
Possibly. I mean, you can always find
not
some.
But
criticism.
anyway, that's we're getting off on a bunny trail there.
Well, yeah. But
What I'm pointing
the
out
other
is that there is a law of lift that supersedes the law of gravity, and that was discovered.
I don't think it supersedes it.
it's
So
not-
that there can still be laws to be discovered that we
It's-
haven't yet discovered.
Sure. Okay.
Especially as we get out into space more.
Yeah, well, I don't know that getting out into space more. You're assuming that we're going to continue to discover more laws. It's possible.
I'm
that
assuming it's possible.
It's possible that we've already discovered all of the basic physical laws, and now all we need to do is fine tune it so that we have the best understanding
Not
possible.
necessarily, because you remember
What do you mean it's
our
not
good.
necessarily? Not-
We
It's
learned about the
possible.
theory of
Possible.
relativity.
Hang on. We're almost out of time. I said possible. It is possible that we've discovered all of the fundamental laws, and now we're just in a state of fine-tuning them. I'm not saying that's likely. I'm not saying that's the case. What I am saying, though, is that if there are natural laws that are undiscovered that might eventually constitute something like a God, there's still no current justification for believing them. And until we get sufficient justification for belief, it's irrational to believe at that point. That's all I was saying.
Well, on that, most people have subjective reasons for believing in God.
Yes.
Sure.
And those kind of experiences, unfortunately, are not the kind you can talk other people into, but at least you
Right.
can't be talked out of what you've already experienced.
Right. And
You can redefine it.
be
Yeah.
But remember
talked out of it because
Einstein,
there
by the way, Einstein, with his theory of relativity and how much we're finding of that's really true, I mean, that's revolutionized so much of what we consider to be physical law. And, we once thought everything was
Right,
exact. Now we realize everything's relative.
we got like 25 seconds left. I
You're
apologize.
doing great.
I got to let you go. Thanks,
You're doing
David.
great.
To the last caller, I guess we'll have to get to it another time. I completely missed the clock, and actually they haven't even started the, there we go, the credits that were supposed to be up 45 seconds ago. So thanks everybody for joining us. We'll see you all again next week. Visit the website or send an email, and we're going to IHOP.